I spent my summers working at while I was an undergrad. A year later, spent some time with the gentleman who worked for Toronto Blue Jays and asked me about a sports career, a sports industry. Conversation I'm sure you've all had with people over and over again. I know I've spoken to a lot of young people about it, on the other side of the conversation. And his recommendation was to get as much experience as I could, keep coaching, be around the game, for a game, and quit my job, get more experience. And he just hired some people from Ohio University from their graduate program. And he was really impressed with the program, how long it had been around, and the fact that it had a big alumni directory that could help kids with practical experience, volunteer opportunities, and internships after you were done. So I applied to the program, I quit my job, started doing some fundraising for amateur football in the province. He kept coaching and was lucky enough to get to the program. Went down to Ohio University, worked in the athletic department, got great experience there with the coaching staff and recruiting, and started looking for internships and went to, through some alumni, got to do things like work the NBA All-Star game, baseball meetings, and Cotton Bowl. And then got some internship opportunities with the London Monarchs and NFL Europe, Buffalo Bills, Washington Redskins, and then ultimately the league office. And that last stop was the management council, and I had never had aspirations to work in cap contracts. And I was familiar with the concept of the cap, but didn't know really how it worked. And it was my first real exposure to it. When I started looking into the business, my hope was to come on the scouting side, but I just wasn't finding those opportunities. So the management council gave me a unique skill set, put me in contact with all 32 clubs on a regular basis, and taught me how to apply the CPA contracts and speak to people in clubs about why they were doing what they were doing in their contracts. So I felt like I had a good foundation for cap management and negotiations. And the Giants needed a cap analyst, and I was fortunate enough to interview and get hired. And once I was in the building, came to realize that the cap itself isn't a full-time job 24/7. It's an important piece of football operations and team building, but it's not going to keep you real busy for an entire year if that's all you do. So I started getting involved with college and pro scouting departments, took on the negotiations, and then since then, as football operations have grown to include more technology and data and what have you, performance, sports science, I took on some of those roles and just built those departments. I'm not a black belt in any of those things, but I'm fluent enough that I can speak it and help the football people speak to the data people and the technology people.
That's great. And hang on there, I'm going to let Joe give his background, and then Nick, and then you're going to line up for questions, and so we can grab some and Kevin before he leaves. So in a couple minutes after these two give the presentation, line up because you have more questions than I do. Joe, your story, assuming you went to high school.
Yeah, I'm originally from Nashville, Tennessee. I went to Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia, played basketball there. When I was in college, I knew I wanted to be a sports agent, didn't know how I was going to accomplish that. So decided to go to law school. When I was applying to law schools, I was looking for who had a sports law class. Went to UCLA, and my hunch was right because that class changed my life. I had a project in that class, which was negotiating the contract of a fictitious Dodgers baseball player. My professor knew industry professionals, had Dodgers general counsel do the team side. I had no idea what I was doing, but they thought that I did a good job, and it turned out my professor's wife had a former colleague who became a sports agent, called my professor looking for a summer intern. I'd already accepted a summer associate's job in a law firm, got out of that to take an unpaid job in the sports industry, was told that the internship had no prospect for advancement over the summer, but I thought if I worked hard enough, maybe I can change their mind. It turned into getting paid something last year in law school and a full-time job when I got out of school. My boss at the time, Leonard Armato, represented Ronnie Lott and Hakeem Olajuwon, and happened to sign Shaquille O'Neal when I was getting out of law school. Since I played basketball, I thought that's where I was going to do most of my work, but Leonard only wanted to recruit icons, so I ended up doing more football stuff, helped build a football practice with the head of the football department. We had the most amicable split you ever had in a sports agency because we took all the football players with us. Leonard wanted no ongoing obligation, and we shared office space with Leonard for another 4 or 5 years. I still did consulting for Leonard, and one of the things that I did for him was I was his right-hand man numbers cruncher when Shaquille O'Neal left the Orlando Magic for the Lakers. And in building football practice, some of the clients we had were John Randall's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, Patrick Surtain, whose son now is a player for the Denver Broncos. Willie McGinnis, who's now an analyst on NFL Network. Steven Jackson is the all-time leading rusher for the Rams. Ken McCardle and Jimmy Smith, who were a very prolific receiving duo in the late 90s, early 2000s for the Jaguars. I got burned out on the agent business about 12, 13 years ago and got out of it. Now, as you heard earlier, I do write a regular column for CBS Sports on salary cap and contract matters. Also have a podcast called Inside the Cap, which goes over the same types of subjects. Then teach new classes for SMWW. One is athlete management, one is a salary cap course, and there's another one which is for people who want to be NFL agents. It's a prep course for the annual exam you have to pass to be certified contract advisor.
And the 85% success rate, so we're really proud to have it. Nick, let's go to you and your background and line up for questions as Nick's giving his story.
Well, thanks, Lynn. So I grew up in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, home of Little League Baseball, and went to college at Lock Haven University, a small Division II school in the Pennsylvania Conference. I was an education major, thought I was going to be a teacher. Wound up my first year after college, taught elementary physical education, and that was half the day, and then I taught high school PE. Realized I didn't want to be a teacher, and I went and I got a graduate assistantship, and I started coaching. Coached at Southern Connecticut as a GA, left and went to James Madison University, spent 5 years there, was able to get my master's degree in higher education there. Left there, went to Brown University, coached defensive line, became a defensive coordinator at Delaware State, and then I went back to my alma mater, Lock Haven, and I was the head coach there for 4 years. One of the things I would tell you is every day is an interview, right? You never know who you're going to come in contact or what you're going to do that allows you an opportunity to get your next job. You know, if I would have thought that from being the head coach at Lock Haven University, I'd wind up in the league office in the NFL, you know, you'd kind of look at me and go, how does that happen? Well, relationships with people. I was the pro liaison with all the different schools I was at, and I built a relationship with John Beek and other scouts, but George Young, and they were in the league office, and I was asked to interview for a position for NFL Europe, where they were looking for a director of football operations. Luckily, I got that job, and like Kevin, I spent all my off season, when I wasn't in Europe in the springtime, I was in the league office, I'd spend every minute I could down with these guys in management council and reading the CBA and trying to learn what I thought was probably one of the most interesting parts of things, which was the salary cap, contract negotiations, and language. Spent 5 years doing NFL Europe, had 5 World Bowls that we organized and all that, but while you're doing that, our training camp was in Tampa, Florida, and Rich McKay was the general manager of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the time, and I had to work with him closely on training camp, facilities, all that stuff in Tampa, and it turns out he's also on the competition committee and the head of the competition committee, and we had to do a lot of presentations about the league to him and others and the owners. Long story short, he went to Atlanta, and in 2004, I got offered a job to be with the Falcons as director of football operations. There was one little caveat, that was that I had to be the general manager of the arena team for 2 years, and then it was going to go from there. And, you know, we figured, hey, you know, the NFL Europe experience allowed me to be the GM, basically, of the Georgia Force. Had 17 really good years in Atlanta, negotiated contracts all those years, and did some scouting, like Kevin talked about, was on the road, did about 20 schools a year early, and then about 2010, I went just to football operations with the salary cap. There was a transition in Atlanta last February, and now I am actually working in a role where I'm representing coaches and front office people with A1 coaching, and going through that first cycle here the last 4 months.
Nick, thanks for stopping by. Let's open up for questions. Start over there on the left. Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Sam Well. I go to Shenandoah University. I'm also a big Giants fan. Mr. Abrams, question for you. How do you go about negotiating with players that are at the end of their primes or like big contracts? How do you like negotiate with them and value like fan favorites?
Give us the inside, Kevin.
Well, we've got a couple now that have been with us for a while that we're talking about either extending or adjusting their contracts for various reasons. And, this is a people business. We're not making widgets, and our players are our livelihood, and they're people that you work with and you really care about. So if there's someone that's been in the organization for years, you're always treating your players with respect, whether they're yours or whether they're coming from another organization. But in particular, the players that have been with you for a while, you have to treat them very respectfully, and you've known them for a while in their family. So and sometimes in negotiations, you're telling them things they don't want to hear. So you just, you become more diplomatic as you get more experience, and you know how to say things, and hopefully a good agent will understand what you're saying without you having to say it in a way that when it's related to the player, it's going to start creating a divide. You never want that. So it's tact like anything else, but you always treat them with respect.
Good question, thank you. Let's go to the next question.
Hi, my name is Nathan. I'm from Rush University outside Chicago. My question is, in the football operations role, kind of like your day-to-day responsibility and kind of like an overview of like the responsibilities that you have.
Who wants it? Go ahead.
Well, the football ops side, you're working with all the support groups, right? So you have the trainers, the video, the equipment department, the analytics department, and you're trying to be that liaison between coaching and the general manager, and you're sitting there and trying to keep information flowing. A normal week for us, we'd have football operations meetings on Tuesdays on our off day. We make sure that we were planning we do a debrief on the previous week, and then we do, what's coming, what might be in travel, might be some logistics. If you're playing in London, there's all types of operational issues you got to deal with. So we tried to do that once a week, where we were able to make sure everybody was on the same page and communicating.
Let's go over here. Kevin, tell me when you have to leave. I'm going to take care of you here. Go ahead over here.
Hi, Gary from Worlds, Louisiana. My question is going to be for Joel. So after passing the NFL cert exam, do you recommend starting off working with an agency first, or just going at it by yourself?
Well, if you can work for an agency, that would be great. SMWW has an agent advisor program, so if you took the athlete management course, passed that, and became an agent advisor, you can get mentored by Dr. Lashbrook. If you're going to work for an agency, they're going to look for someone who can bring something to them, quite honestly. Like you're talking CA or athletes first. So if you had a connection to a potential first-round pick next year, that would be your best way to get into the door with well-established agency.
Joe answered that very well. I just want to share this. The first question, any family player, who do you have? And you say, well, I'm just getting started. Like Kelly told you her story. We do have an incubator. We have a lot of our graduates through Joe's course that are an affiliate. It's very friendly, but we give you a lot of support and 25 years experience. But it's no strings attached. We want you to become a successful agent. I just want you to know that. But I think my mic's dying up here, you guys, but that's your problem, not mine. Let's go over here. What? I thought somebody yelled at me. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Tim from New Jersey, and my question was, I guess, using the Giants as an example, this offseason, there's a big change in the front office, Jeff Shane coming in this year. Does that change your strategy from both the team perspective and the player perspective in negotiating contracts, especially if you already had negotiation before?
Who wants to go first? Kev, go ahead.
Anytime you have a change in leadership, you're going to find out if they have ideas and they want to bring things that came from Joe's case that came from Buffalo most recently. Maybe they've done things that we haven't, or they've decided not to do things the way that we have done it in the past. So we'll sort of vet those differences, and obviously he's the GM, so whatever he wants to do is how we're going to do it. But as far as what we're doing, every offseason is different, but the tools at your disposal, regardless of where you're working, are pretty similar. And you just have to figure out where you are in your own organization's, sort of roster life cycle. And are you rebuilding? Are you tearing down? Are you in your window where you need to be pushing all your chips to the table so you can take the best run this year, or are you building more for a 2, 3, 4 year horizon? So those are the things you take into account. I don't think it's so much a factor of new leadership. It's just knowing what you are and where you are in your program.
Let's go to the middle here.
Hi, I'm a freshman at Seton Hill University on the football team out there. Nick, this question's more in for you based on your background, but I'd love to hear from all of you guys. What advice do you, so I'm on the football team, I'm a freshman. I still have like 4 more years of football playing time ahead of me, but like I'm interested in coaching. What advice do you have for somebody who's like me, has time playing left, but like wants to get their foot in the door?
Nick, I'll let you take it.
Well, I think the foot in the door is you play your career out, right? And you want to let your coaches know that that's an interest of yours, that you actually want to coach. And, you may be able to do some things as you get to be, a senior, or you may do a post-grad year or something there. But to me, it's becoming a graduate assistant is a great route to be able to get your foot in the door coaching, but it also allows you then to get your master's degree, right? So you get your feet wet in coaching, you see if you really like it, and if you don't, then you still can get your degree.
And I admire you for coming here because players sometimes focus on their playing days and take a course. I'd love to mentor you because you're bright. You got a bright future. Let's go, Ruben.
Thank you.
Alex Kujawa from Wisconsin. Question for Kevin. I'm just curious how you kind of go about divvying the responsibility for those, that are maybe underneath you within the organization. Obviously, a lot of different players here, but maybe how you go about divvying up specific position groups with scouts and other people within the organization to make sure you guys, cover everything as much as possible.
Well, I think Nick had mentioned before that within our football operations, we've got more departments now than we did when I started 20 years ago. I mean, it used to be video coaching, scouting, and that was about it. Now there's data, performance, sports science, technology that are specific to football, not just organizational. So it depends on the skill set, and everyone understands that everything we do is to support players, coaches, and scouts. That's everything we do is eventually so that we are better than our competition in those 3 areas. As far as how we divvy it, we try and be a development, continuous learning organization. We encourage our people to get involved beyond maybe their actual responsibilities now, so they get exposed to doing things that might be their next step up. We sort of decide when they're ready for it. We certainly do it in a way that the impact of maybe lack of success early won't have a tremendous negative impact on what we want to do in the entirety. But it's we're just constantly developing our people, pushing them to challenge themselves and giving them opportunities to do things that maybe aren't their responsibilities today, but will be in time.
Good stuff. Let's go to the left here. Go ahead, you.
This is for Coach Polk. You mentioned that you played and coached at Lock Haven, and Lock Haven, the last 30 or so years, has had some well-documented struggles. So from your time playing and coaching there, how does that eventually get undone? How does Lock Haven eventually get
Come on, man. Tell us what you do.
So I'm actually very involved in Lock Haven, back involved, and they just went through a coaching search. And one of the things we emphasize to the president and the athletic director is you need to make a commitment. And the commitment doesn't always have to be financial, but there has to be support within the organization. The last time that they won a championship there is 1979, right? The last winning season we had is when I was the coach there back in the 90s, to even be close to winning any games. They had the longest losing streak in the history of Division II football. The point to your question is there needs to be a commitment from administration. There needs to be a commitment from the president, and you need to make sure that your booster groups and your alumni are supportive. They've done the right things with facilities recently. They just have to, try and make a little more commitment to scholarship because the schools they're playing have full scholarship allotments.
Thank you very much.
Do you go to Lock Haven?
No, but I was born and raised a Columbia Lions football fan, so I've gone through my own struggles.
We're there together.
Hi, I'm Dylan Gonzalez from Florida. I guess this question would be for Kevin and Nick. I talked to a couple different directors of scouting for different teams, and most teams, from what it seems like, for their scouting assistant interview process are different in what they look for their scouts, for their scouting assistants. Just wanted to see what y'all would be looking for as well as what kind of traits do you guys look for your scouting assistant jobs?
We use our scouting assistant positions as sort of a springboard to becoming part of our scouting staff and the scouting role. So we do want people that have aspirations to be evaluators. But in the administrative role, they're going to have to be organized. They're going to be managing, especially on the college side, when the people they're helping to organize are not in the building. It does take a lot of organization and communication, and a lot of times they're doing it with their direct supervisor. They'll be on the road a lot too, so they're kind of on an island, so they need to be self-starters, they need to not require a lot of supervision. And then hopefully, what we try and do is we'll take them and have them do something northeast, which is in our backyard, so we'll have them doing local stuff, so they're never too far from the office, but they'll be available to scout nearby, while also coordinating the business lives of all of our scouts who are out in the building.
And let me go to Joe real quick, we'll come to you, but Joe, salary cap positions in the NFL today. I'm curious of your thoughts before Kevin and Nick answer what's in their program, because there were no salary cap when I started in '83. They just started with a new collective bargaining agreement. What's the growth of the salary cap industry in your opinion?
Well, to me, it's analytics is where I've seen more growth from the outside looking in. That football analytics have lagged behind baseball, where it's been more predominant, and even basketball. And now, from a team standpoint, you see analytics departments not only for the on-field stuff, but for contract negotiations, and that puts the agent world at a competitive disadvantage because agencies don't typically have the manpower to match up for stuff like that. So in some respects, a team can have an advantage in contract negotiation with some agents.
Joe or Kevin, you want to comment on that capacity in your department now?
Well, I mean, I would agree that there's more analytics involved in our negotiations, not so much on the numbers and terms in the deal, but sort of more in the research that you can provide that is data-driven into the negotiations, as opposed to us speaking with an agent and we have a personnel evaluation on the player that we're negotiating about, and the agent might not. I don't think most agencies have the scouting department, so they kind of have to take our word for it on with the players. In our opinion, there's really no rebuttal now. But I do agree with Joel. They don't have the analytic build-out that we do in our building, but they do have access to data that levels the playing field a little bit. They can use PFF, which we don't see that as an apples and apples evaluation tool, but it is something that they can use, and it is at their disposal. And it does provide usage and alignment and roles that players play, and it does allow them to have more data-driven information to bring to a negotiation. And it actually helps us sometimes because it is a more fact-based conversation than it ever has been before.
Nick, you have to add before I go to call.
The one thing I would add that is a little different is the evolution of the CBA with the rookie pool and how different it was when Kevin and I started. Like when I did Matt Ryan's rookie contract, that was a very difficult contract to do, and it was over 70 pages long, and it was really 6 contracts within one. Where now it's much easier for both the agents and for the clubs to take care of the rookie contracts. It allows for a little more creativity, I think, on the free agent deals.
Good stuff. Let's go back here.
Brian Galligan from Newburgh, New York. I had a two-sided question, but one is, how do you deal with players that possibly need to be humbled, thinking they deserve a little bit more money, and you have to point out the things that they're lacking in order for them to get paid at all? And have you guys ever actually been in a situation where you've been humbled because possibly you've messed up in a contract any time in your career?
Kevin, I'll start with you.
I feel like I get humbled every day. I don't know if it's so much a humbling of the players. I know what you're saying. I don't think we look at it to try and knock them down a peg or discourage their confidence in themselves. But the player seems to be, thinking they've arrived a little sooner than they have, or don't acknowledge the role they're actually in and believe that they're a bigger piece of the puzzle than they are. That's really a coaching thing, and they'll look at the players sort of that. And it's also a player thing. We like every team. I mean, you're in your best situation when the players are the sheriffs in the locker room more so than us guys upstairs with the coaching staff. So humbling usually gets sorted out amongst the players, and then the necessary coaches step in.
Okay, Nick, you want to comment?
Well, I would just say that, the market speaks, right, to the player and the agent, and it's a relationship business, so you hope that between you and the agent, you can talk through whatever that issue is. And you have player engagement people within your building as well that also work with the players. And, it's the agent's responsibility and the player engagement folks. It's not the salary cap negotiator to quote unquote humble the player. You have people that work with them on different things, but you speak of, everybody has contracts that will get evaluated as, oh, that wasn't a good contract. But every individual team has reasons why they're doing things. And sometimes those reasons are not known outside of the building. And, you do the best you can. And sometimes, the player gets a very good contract that from the outside seems to be too much. But, you learn that you don't know. Like, I don't know what's going on in Kevin's building. He didn't know what was going on with the Falcons when I was there. And neither really do the agents.
Joe, you're on the outside. You make money stirring it up a little bit. You have comments.
Yeah,
We're on the NFL.
comment to this particular question. It's the agent's job to manage the expectations of his client and help him set realistic expectations. There's a situation last year that I didn't think was imaginable from the tight end market, because if you told me Johnny Smith was going to sign for the most money fully guaranteed for a tight end in NFL history at $12.5 million per year, after 41 catches, 448 yards, and 8 touchdowns, I would have laughed at you. Now, what that is doing for the Dalton Schultzes, the Mike Gesicki's of the world, even maybe David Njoku's, they're looking at that and going, this guy caught less than 30 balls in New England last year. We should all be above that. Even as Zach Ertz, who's an older guy, 31, who's coming off of like a 75 catch, 750-yard season, is going to be pointing at that deal. And where the managing expectations are going to come in, it'll be more with Zach Ertz, because at 31, even if he's still highly productive, a team is going to be less likely to make the commitment of a Johnny Smith for a guy who should have declining production in the next couple of years.
Good stuff. Let's go over here to the left.
So, my name is Will. I'm from Boston, Mass. And my question for Kevin is, what do you look for the most when you're building a team through the draft and free agency?
Well, certainly now with Joe in the building, he brought their core tenants in Buffalo that he brought to us is smart, tough, and dependable. So that's, and I think everyone's looking for that. It's not unique to us, but we talk about it a lot. You're not always going to hit those three things. Sometimes the NFL changes people sometimes, and I think we always have to be aware. And Joel probably commented on too. This having represented NFL players, it looks like a great profession, but it's hard. The NFL is a tough gig, and it can be soul crushing at times. And for some guys, you'll find out who loves it playing football. When you go through injuries and criticism, and now more than ever with social media, and these guys, doesn't matter how many times you tell them, don't look, don't read it, don't engage. They're going to look, they're going to read it, and they're going to engage. And we have guys that we bring in specifically because we think they can handle the New York market, the New York media, and all the attention they get playing football under the bright lights. And almost to a person, there's going to be a time during that rookie season we would sit down with them and say, all right, tell us about your social media habits, because you're walking around like your dog died, you're miserable with what's going on, and you're reading stuff and you're getting affected by these anonymous voices that are just echoing in your head right now, and you need to stop doing it. And a lot of times they can't. So we're looking for smart, tough, and dependable, and guys that can handle the scrutiny and what is a really, really hard profession that doesn't always look like it from the outside. But these are young men, trying to deal with grown-up expectations and grown-up little pressure.
Thank you. 4 more questions here, and we'll get you out of here, Kevin. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Scott Lewis. I'm from Southern California. Something that I noticed in a recent interview is John Lynch mentioned in regards to like Nick Polk and Devo saying both having extensions coming up. They mentioned the fact that they had been planning for quite a while for their extension, making that money, then making that room in their salary cap. I guess one of the things I was curious about is how far in advance are these teams typically preparing their salary cap? How far are they are they preparing that money and making sure that they have the room necessary to keep their guys and potentially make room for new ones? And also, do you feel like you are in a place where you have to consistently be making adjustments to that cap and that expectation?
We typically work on a 3-year window, knowing that, no lock you better be ready to adjust at any moment. And, but it is usually a 3-year window, understanding when, San Francisco's a good example. They've got some big deals that they're going to have to account for. And as they do their deals today, they need to know that they've got the flexibility to do what they're going to have to do with them. So, again, I don't know how you did it, but we're usually a 3-year window.
Go ahead, Nick.
No, we were on a 3-year window. We were on a 5-year window with cash, and with salary cap, we worked on a 3-year window. But there's a lot of things that come in, especially like when the pandemic came. There's $20-some million less than what they were supposed to be on the cap. You got to be flexible. You got to have methods.
Joe, you have a quick comment on that, being a commentator?
Yes, the underrated part is the cash budget, because there's a cash budget and a salary cap, and from a cash standpoint, if you're an agent, you're gonna have a signing bonus deferred in all likelihood, and it's a question of how much, because I used to hear, well, we can't give it to you all this year because of our cash budget, we're gonna have to defer some into the next year. And the question is, would that be July? Would that be January? And now getting the 49ers, this is a team which will be able to afford both Deebo Samuel and Nick Bosa, who, if Aaron Donald's rework contract doesn't get him there first, and Bosa, I suspect will be the first $30 million per year non-quarterback. But they don't have to pay a quarterback for the next couple of years. I'm assuming Jimmy Garoppolo is gone, and Trey Lance is going into year 2 of a rookie contract. And can't sign an extension until after his 3rd year anyway. It may not get done until heading into year 5, and then the first 2, the cap numbers won't start escalating until you're into the Deebo Samuel and Nick Bosa.
Take Joe Corry's course. You love salary cap. Let's go here.
I'm John Burchak. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, and I'm looking to go back to school to be a graduate assistant to coach football. My question for Nick: what would be the best college to go to for her to be the pursue a graduate assistant?
Lockheed, aren't they looking?
Graduate assistant. So obviously, the highest level that you can get to is the best level to get to. But I can tell you that when I was doing it, I sent letters to and resumes to every one of these teams, and I came from a small program, and I didn't have an in or I didn't have a way. You can do it from any level. And I learned at Lock Haven. Obviously, we all know that they weren't very good. But I GA'd at Southern Connecticut. But I got an opportunity then to move up to 1AA and James Madison and had other things that I was able to do. But regardless of the level, it's taking advantage of the opportunity to, I always say, get your degree. Because as a young person, you're going in, sometimes you change your mind about your passion, right? But if your passion is coaching and you want to be a GA, you'll get through that. And then when I was coaching, they also had what was called restricted earnings positions. They don't have those now. They have analysts and they have different types of positions. But you strive to be at the highest level. If you can get to Alabama and be with Nick Saban, that's where you want to be. But if you can't, don't think that you can't do it from a lower level.
Not everybody get to Fort Hays like me. I mean, I understand it's hard to be given the silver spoon like I was. Go ahead.
JD here from Northern Indiana. My question's for Joel. I keep hearing on the cap, everybody talks about the voidable or dead years of a contract and how that affects the cap. Can you explain that? It sounds like a loophole to the cap is what it sounds like.
Yeah, well, actually it is, because if you add voiding/dummy years to a contract, you can prorate through these years even though they're not real years. And you saw that last year because the cap dropped from 198.2 million to 182.5 million. A team like the Steelers had never done that before. But when they signed Juju Smith-Schuster, they gave him a $7 million signing bonus, I believe, on the deal. And added 4 dummy voiding years so they could prorate the signing bonus over 5 years as opposed to having the signing bonus all count in 2021. When the contract voids, which I believe it already did, they're having $5.6 million of the cap charge in 2022 dead money. Whereas if they had done it just a straight one-year deal, there would be no cap charge in 2022, but it would have had a much higher cap charge in 2021.
Okay.
Last question here, great job.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Rafael Basso. I'm an attorney from New York. My question was
I
kind of
wouldn't know by your accent, go ahead.
generally speaking. Kevin, I was wondering if you could touch on if there's any crossover between in-house legal departments for NFL teams and player personnel departments who deal in contractual or legal issues.
From time to time, I mean, if we're in a grievance situation, certainly our general counsel will get involved. We'll have an annual review. Conversations about what may or may not affect our football operations, and we'll get our general counsel involved in that. Hiring and firing, they're involved in. So there's plenty of reasons and times we do get our general counsel involved, but it's sort of case by case, and not on a daily basis. There's not a regularly scheduled piece of our football operations.
Thank you very much.
Kevin and Nick and Joe, I know it's a busy day. Joe, glad you're part of the teaching family here. Nick, I appreciate your task going forward. Kevin, I know how busy you are. We enjoyed our relationship. You took time to help people learn more insight about the business. Let's give that SCW. Let's give it up.